joining us now, the one and only Sheriff David Clarke. You can go to americasheriff.com. Sheriff Clarke, great to have you.
Thanks, John. It's great to be on with you. Hello to your listeners.
Now, a couple things. Let's start with the Louisville, the riots going on there. Antifa pulls up with a U-Haul truck and unloads riot gear. What is going on here, Sheriff?
Well, it's out of control. Totally inappropriate response last night from the people in the Louisville area to the grand jury decision. Look, they were asking for justice. They got justice. Part of justice is due process. It went to a grand jury. A grand jury made a determination. The police did not make that determination. In fact, I find that they even indicted one of the officers for endangerment to be highly problematic in light of the fact that officers were fired upon serving a lawful search warrant before they returned fire to defend themselves.
So, I mean, the grand jury, and the thing about a grand jury, Sheriff, is just so everybody knows what the process is, the prosecutors go to the grand jury looking for an indictment. That doesn't mean they're guilty. They just have enough evidence for an indictment. And there's no defense. You only present one side, and the jury decides if there's enough evidence there to go forward with an indictment, and then you have due process and you have your ability to defend yourself. Well, they went to the grand jury. The grand jury wouldn't hand any of these indictments down after they reviewed the evidence that the prosecutors went up with. So you had due process, you had justice. Why are we rioting?
Because the folks that are out there rioting, they're not looking for justice. John, you know this, your listeners know it. They're looking for revenge. And, this whole thing was a very unfortunate situation, but the fact is the police were fired upon first, and they have the legal authority to return fire, and that's why this grand jury didn't return any indictment in terms of a murder or reckless homicide or anything like that. They looked at the facts, and like you said, it's not a contested situation. The prosecutor goes in, presents the case, the grand jury gets to make the decision. Now, there are a lot of times in life when you're dealing with disappointments. I understand people's disappointment. Most of the people who are disappointed, though, John, they don't know all the facts of this case. They found out what they know about it from Twitter. They found out from what they know about it through sources who don't know what they're talking about. There was a lot of misinformation put on about this case as time went on, including by this ambulance-chasing civil rights attorney, Crump, who put out false information on Twitter. By the way, Twitter didn't take him down for putting that false information out as to what happened.
Right.
So you have all this swirling around, and that's what gets people all worked up when a decision's made. The decision was made within the law. But when you don't understand the law, when you don't understand the facts, when you don't know the facts, you end up going off, as they say, half-cocked, and that's what happened last night with the rioting. But, there was a curfew in place. The curfew was ignored. These curfews usually are ignored. But you had all these individuals out there, rioting, not observing the social distancing. I wonder if anybody went to Fauci to ask him his reaction to the people who were rioting last night with no masks on and not observing social distancing orders. Well, you know what?
Are they going to get fined for that?
Rally.
Are they going to get fined because you're supposed to have masks on there, right, in Louisville, right, Democratic mayor there? Are they going to get like a $500 fine? But, the fact that Antifa pulls up with truckloads of gear, riot gear, offensive gear, I mean, isn't this a terrorist act? I mean, if there was a protest in, I don't know, Richmond, let's say, and I pull up with a truck and I've got riot gear in it and I've got weapons in it and I unload the truck and start handing them out, I mean, is that legal?
No, it's not. And fortunately, William Barr, the Attorney General, is starting to throw the hammer down in some of these cities on with what's going on. It's going to take some time, but there are federal prohibitions against that sort of activity. And my hope would be that the United States Department of Justice would start investigating. We don't know that they don't have an investigation going on trying to identify these Antifa members and these Marxist Black Lives Matter, and follow the money, seize the assets. These are painstaking investigations. When you use organized crime statutes, it takes a long time. But my hope is that one day we wake up and hear that DOJ announced seizures, asset seizures, bank money seizures, and arrest for this unlawful behavior.
Unlawful behavior. I mean, this is a sampling of what you're going to get, Sheriff. A lot of people think on after the election. I mean, the way this is being laid out, and I really want to get your take on this because Steve Bannon and his team have exposed what we're calling the blue steel. We're going on tour next week to go around the United States and tell people what they're planning to do. But part of it is mob rule. Part of it is to incite mobs in every major city in the United States when Trump has the lead, a big lead on game day, and the mobs are then activated, right? We all know they're getting paid. I mean, I was in New York the other day and talking to somebody at one of the events I had, and he said he was doing business in the Pac West, and he took a train from somewhere to Seattle. I guess it was from St. Louis Obispo or something up the coast to Seattle. He had just a business meeting there. He had business doing Seattle. And he said they got off on one stop and 50 people came in like military fatigues, and they were all going to Seattle to riot. Like, who paid for their ticket, who paid for their meals, who put them up in a hotel. These were not Seattle residents that were up in arms over something the cops did. These are paid people that they're shipping from city to city. Who the hell's paying for this?
Well, that's something that an investigation would have to determine as to what, the money source, follow the money. But the thing is, too, that the left has made it clear this insurgency, and that's what this is. This is an insurgency to bring down the United States government. Mm-hmm. They're not going to take no for an election. They're not going to take no after the election, should they lose. And they've made it clear that elections don't matter anymore. I mean, they started this in 2016 when Trump won. They didn't care about that. These insurgents spent the last 4 years trying to delegitimize this president and not allow him to execute his duty under the Constitution as the chief executive. So it's going to continue. You said that we're seeing a sample. No, this is the real deal. This is the early stages of it. It's not a sample. They're working underground right now, but they're putting the building blocks in place, as you said. They're building the platform with which they will use to undermine the 2020 election, regardless of the outcome. And I don't think that they're necessarily in favor of a Biden win anyway. They want to bring down the United States government, regardless of who's sitting in power in Washington, D.C. So they're not fighting for Biden. They're fighting for a Marxist socialist overthrow of the United States government.
Well, that's the thing. We don't even know half the time what these riots are about or what they want. They have no demands other than, it seems like, just to overthrow the government to replace it with what? Some kind of communist regime. Sheriff David Clarke with us, America's Sheriff. Good to have you, Sheriff Clarke. You live in Rufus the Democrat said. He can't wait till you're on every week. Okay, Cowboys, huge comeback, biggest comeback ever last week. Another collapse by Atlanta, but the Cowboys come back. Okay, I told everybody I'm like 2 games away from abandoning the NFL, but my Titans are 2-0. I'm kind of getting past it now. Ratings are down, though. What's going on with the NFL? Is it going to survive? Will there be change? What say you?
Well, first of all, they're going to have to figure out how to fill these stadiums up. That's part of the pageantry of not only college football, but the NFL. I did not watch the games. I'll admit I watched the replays afterwards, some of the news stories about the game. I'm still not there yet. I will not say I'll never watch an NFL game again, but I'm just not there right now. But there are some encouraging things. The NFL is not doing an in-your-face like the NBA did. The NFL has approved the wearing of crime victims on the backs of players' jerseys, on their helmets, I should say, not the back of the jersey. For instance, one player is going to wear DeVell Gardner, the 1-year-old who was shot in the stomach sitting in a baby stroller in New York at a family barbecue. Another player said that he was going to wear Captain Dorn from the St. Louis Police Department, retired after 20 27 or so years. And he was working security when he was shot and killed, responding to a burglar alarm during the St. Louis riots. So somebody said they would put his name on the back of the helmet. So I'm okay with that. As long as they live, give the other side a voice to be heard. I'm okay with some of the players being in support of criminals, being cop haters, but let some of the players who want to, let them have their voices heard about the real problem in this country, and it's a black-on-black crime. So there is some hope here with the NFL, and maybe they'll do it right, unlike the NBA. I will flat out say I will not watch the NBA.
I'm done with the NBA, too. I mean, I've not tuned in a single game since I saw Black Lives Matter painted on the court, and they're running around in the Black Lives Matter shirts, and this is a communist Marxist organization that wants to overthrow the government, and they want to dissolve fathers and have families without fathers and dissolve the family unit. So I'm done with that. I mean, I dealt with it being on I'm an Astro fan, as you know. First game at home, they had it on the back of the mound. One game, I dealt with that. After the first game at Minute Maid, they got rid of it and they put on a Chevy ad. Okay, I could deal with it one game. Okay, I can deal with that. But I'm done with the NBA. I don't think I'll ever watch a game again until this nonsense stops. And the fact that the players, led by LeBron and others, threatened the owners and said, if you don't do our political agenda and put money into these various political left-wing causes, then we're going to walk out. I'm done. That's it for me, because they're getting paid on my money. I'm watching them. I'm buying their products. I'm going to games, spending, you go to an NBA game today, you bring your family. I mean, it's not $50 like when my dad took me to the Garden to see the Knicks, in the 60s. $30 would be the entire night. Now it's like hundreds of dollars. Screw that. I'm paying these people crap. So I'm with you on the NBA.
It's interesting. That's interesting. One of the NBA players put their money where their mouth is. LeBron James was made an offer. There were two LA County Sheriff's deputies that were ambushed, sitting in a cruiser on a street in Compton, and a reward was put up to identify the perpetrator, who still has not been identified. What does that say about that community? But anyway, the reward reached, I think it was a GoFundMe reward, reached about $175,000, and the sheriff of LA County challenged LeBron to match the $175,000 raised to identify the perp, and we didn't hear a peep from LeBron James in terms of that. So we know what side he's on, and he could have stepped up there and said, yeah, two wrongs don't make a right, wrong is wrong, and I'm in on this, but no, he passed.
I mean, it's just, it's very unfortunate, Sheriff, what is going on. And I don't mean to get riled up, but I'm just done. I'm just done with the NBA. But I tell you what, NFL, I mean, like you, I'm on the edge. And if they start losing diehards like you and I, which are football fans, I mean, they're going to be a shell of what they are.
The ratings are down.
I mean, sure, they're down big. I mean, they're on the edge now. Because, and what's happening is, like, I didn't watch a single NBA game, and now I'm over it. Like, I'm not going to come back. I'm gone. It's out of my system. I'm out.
Yeah.
Same thing is going to happen to the NFL. All right, I got a couple texts here. I got questions. I've got to read here if I can get to them. Let's see. Okay. Barry in Weir's Cave, Virginia says, John, could you ask Sheriff Clarke, why hasn't Antifa been classified as a domestic terrorist group? It's obvious who they are. But Barry in Weir's Cave.
Well, it has been designated by the President of the United States. That's the order that he gave to his Attorney General to investigate them as such. Like I said, these investigations are very painstaking. They take a long period of time, so we may not hear for a while what they come up with, but I wouldn't doubt that there's an investigation underway to identify these people, seize their assets, arrest them, and get rid of them.
Okay, this is from Taurus in Richmond. He's got two texts. One, he says, just out of curiosity, if the NFL continues to support social justice, John, are you going to put your money where your mouth is and pull the Steelers broadcast from your network? How can you stop watching a product that is benefiting you? Good question. Taurus, question for Sheriff Clarke. people don't settle for $12 million if they weren't at fault. That's what the city of Louisville paid the Breonna Taylor family. How do you react to that?
Well, claims are always made after a death, and cities usually pay out. I think that $12 million was excessive. In my experience, $4 or $5 million is about the top end for a wrongful death claim. That does not. It's even written into the final decision that the city admits no fault in the situation. So it doesn't mean that they are admitting any fault in this situation. This is a tragic situation, no doubt about it.
John Fredericks Radio Network, Sheriff David Clarke. Thank you for being with us, Sheriff.